First contact and underestimation. The Hyperion glided silently through the void, its sleek gunmetal hull reflecting distant starlight as it approached the uncharted system. Captain Alina Reyes stood at the bridge's central command station, her dark eyes scanning the holographic displays surrounding her position. After 3 months of deep space exploration, her crew had finally discovered something extraordinary. Sensor analysis complete, Captain, Lieutenant Commander Takashi announced, his fingers dancing across the neural interface pad. We're detecting artificial structures throughout the system's fourth planet. Non-human design, advanced energy signatures. It's definitely a civilization we haven't encountered before. Alina's heartbeat quickened, but her expression remained composed. As the captain of humanity's most advanced exploration vessel, first contact scenarios were always simultaneously thrilling and dangerous. Mankind had expanded across 27 star systems in the century since developing FTL travel, but intelligent alien species remained exceedingly rare. This would be only their fourth encounter. Deploy observation drones, Alina commanded. Keep our position at the system's edge and maintain stealth protocols. I want complete data before we announce ourselves. The bridge crew worked with practiced efficiency. The Hyperion wasn't just an exploration vessel. Beneath its scientific exterior lay military-grade systems that could transform it into a formidable warship if necessary. It was a precaution Earth's united government had insisted upon after their disastrous first contact with the Axari 70 years earlier. For 3 days, they observed. The aliens called themselves the Zarelians, according to communications intercepted and translated by the ship's eye. They appeared to be a spacefaring empire spanning at least 12 star systems, with technology seemingly comparable to humanity's own. They've detected our observation drones, Security Chief Diallo reported, his deep voice breaking the contemplative silence on the bridge. 3 vessels on intercept course. Alina nodded, unsurprised. Prepare for first contact protocols. Deactivate weapon systems, but keep shields at standby. Let's show them we come in peace, but we're not defenseless. The Zarelian vessels approached with impressive speed. Sleek, crystalline ships that pulsed with internal azure light. They were beautiful, almost organic in design, forming a triangular formation around the Hyperion. They're hailing us, Captain, Communications Officer Chen announced. On screen. The main view screen flickered to life, revealing a tall, slender being with iridescent blue skin and 4 arms. Its eyes, 6 small orbs arranged in a hexagonal pattern, seemed to shimmer with internal light. I am Grand Commander Xeril of the Zarelian Stellar Imperium, the alien announced, its voice translated into smooth English by the ship's eye. You have entered sovereign Zarelian space. Identify yourselves. Alina stepped forward. I am Captain Alina Reyes of the United Earth exploration vessel Hyperion. We're on a peaceful mission of discovery and scientific research. We apologize for entering your territory unknowingly and request permission to establish diplomatic relations. The Zarelian commander's eyes pulsed with what might have been amusement. Interesting. Our scans indicate your species has only recently achieved interstellar capability. Your vessel's design is primitive by our standards. Alina maintained her diplomatic smile despite the dismissive tone. This wasn't the first time humans had been underestimated by older spacefaring races. We're eager to learn from more experienced civilizations. Perhaps we could arrange a cultural exchange. Perhaps, Xeril replied, the translated voice suddenly cold. Our Imperium protocols require that we first examine your vessel and technology to assess your development level. Prepare to be boarded. Alina's smile disappeared. I'm afraid that won't be possible, Commander. While we welcome peaceful contact, boarding our vessel without permission would violate our own protocols. The Zarelian's eyes flashed. You misunderstand, Captain. This wasn't a request. Primitive species must be properly evaluated before communication can proceed further. Before Alina could respond, the view screen went dark. They're powering weapons systems, Diallo reported tensely. energy signatures building in all three vessels. Elena's expression hardened. So much for diplomacy. Activate defense systems. Do not fire unless fired upon. The Hyperion's seemingly smooth hull reconfigured as hidden weapon ports opened and shield emitters activated. What had appeared to be a scientific vessel now revealed its true nature as a heavily armed warship. The Zarelian vessels fired simultaneously, plasma beams lancing toward the Hyperion. They expected to slice through the primitive human vessel with ease. Instead, the beams splashed harmlessly against quantum phase shields, technology the Zarelians clearly hadn't anticipated. The bridge crew maintained their positions, unfazed by the attack. Their weapons had no effect on our shields. Tactical Officer Rodriguez reported. Shield integrity at 97%. Elena nodded calmly. Open a channel. The Zarelian commander appeared on screen again, his expression unreadable to human eyes, but his posture suggested surprise. Commander Xarel, Elena began, her voice steady. That was an unwarranted act of aggression against a peaceful vessel. I suggest you reconsider your approach. Impossible, Xarel responded. Our scans indicated your defenses were minimal. How did? Your scans were deliberately allowed to see only what we wanted them to see, Elena interrupted. A protective measure we've learned to employ when meeting new species. I again request peaceful diplomatic contact, but I warn you, we are fully capable of defending ourselves. As if to emphasize her point, the Hyperion's tactical systems locked onto the Zarelian vessels, weapon ports glowing with contained energy. Stand down, Commander, Elena continued, or we'll be forced to demonstrate more of our primitive technology. A tense silence followed as the Zarelian commander assessed this unexpected development. Finally, he spoke, his translated voice carrying a new note of caution. It seems we have misinterpreted your technological level, Captain. Perhaps further discussion is warranted. Over the next few hours, a cautious dialogue was established. The Zarelians, Elena learned, had dominated their sector of space for millennia with few challengers. They categorized species by technological advancement, treating lesser civilizations as essentially irrelevant except as resources or subjects. Our preliminary scan suggested your species was at least 2 centuries behind our development, Xarel admitted during their third conversation. Your hull composition appeared simplistic, your propulsion system unremarkable. A common misconception, Elena replied diplomatically. Humanity has learned to innovate differently than most. We focus on adaptation rather than power alone. The discussions continued for several days, growing increasingly tense as more Zarelian vessels arrived in the system. Elena knew they were stalling, gathering forces while assessing humanity's true capabilities. They're preparing for something, she told her senior staff during a private briefing. 7 more warships have entered the system, and they're positioning themselves strategically. Should we withdraw, Captain? Navigator Patil asked. We've gathered substantial data on their civilization. Elena shook her head. If we run, they'll pursue. They see our technology as a threat now, or worse, something to be acquired. No, we stand our ground. She activated the ship's quantum entanglement communicator, technology the Zarelians couldn't detect or intercept, and sent a priority message to Earth Command, detailing the situation and their coordinates. Hyperion to Earth Command. First contact with Zarelian Empire unsuccessful. Hostile intent confirmed. Request immediate diplomatic and military support. Transmitting all data gathered. Will maintain position until reinforcements arrive or situation deteriorates. 3 days later, the Zarelians made their move. 12 warships surrounded the Hyperion, their weapons primed. Final transmission from Commander Xarel. Captain, Chen reported. They're demanding our immediate surrender and technology transfer. Elena stood from her command chair, straightening her uniform. Send no reply. Battle stations. Activate all defensive systems. The Hyperion hummed with power as its full military capabilities came online. Hidden thrusters repositioned the ship into optimal defensive formation, weapon systems locked onto priority targets, and the quantum shields expanded to maximum strength. They're firing, Captain. Dozens of energy beams converged on the Hyperion from all directions, a coordinated strike designed to overwhelm any defense system. Braced for impact, Elena called, gripping her command console. The quantum shields absorbed the initial barrage, converting the energy into power for the Hyperion's own systems, an innovation the Xerelians couldn't comprehend. But the attack's sheer magnitude eventually took its toll. Shields at 63% and falling, Rodriguez reported. We can't absorb much more of this. Elena nodded grimly. Target their lead vessel. Show them what primitive humans can do. The Hyperion's main cannon charged, drawing power from the very attacks being launched against it. When it fired, the beam cut through space with devastating precision, slicing through the Xerelian flagship's shields and carving a molten path through its hull. The enemy attack faltered as their formation scattered, clearly shocked by the unexpected display of power. Targeted vessel heavily damaged, Diallo reported with grim satisfaction. Their weapons are offline. All vessels, emergency thrusters, Elena commanded. Break formation and execute evasive pattern delta. The Hyperion burst into motion, its supposedly simplistic propulsion system demonstrating maneuverability that defied the Xerelians' understanding of physics. The vessel weaved between enemy ships, its point defense weapons disabling key systems rather than destroying the vessels outright. They're regrouping, Takashi warned. 9 vessels still combat capable. Elena knew the Hyperion couldn't withstand a prolonged battle against so many opponents, but they didn't need to win, only to survive until help arrived. Activate the quantum mirage, she ordered. This was their most closely guarded technology, a system that created multiple energy signatures identical to the Hyperion, making it impossible to determine which was the real vessel. Suddenly, instead of one human ship, the Xerelians faced 5 identical targets, each exhibiting the same power signatures and defensive capabilities. They're confused, Chen reported, monitoring enemy communications. Their targeting systems can't distinguish between the real ship and the decoys. Elena allowed herself a small smile. Maintain defensive posture. Help is coming. As if summoned by her words, space rippled at the edge of the system. A massive quantum distortion formed, growing into a swirling vortex of energy. The signature of a human quantum gate opening. Through this artificial wormhole emerged humanity's response to the Xerelian aggression. The UEA's Excalibur, Earth's most advanced warship, entered the system, its kilometer-long hull bristling with weapon systems that made the Hyperion look like a scout vessel by comparison. Behind it came 4 destroyer-class vessels, arranging themselves in combat formation. Captain, Chen called out, unable to hide her relief. We're being hailed by the Excalibur. Admiral Hassan sends his compliments and asks if we require assistance. Elena's exhausted crew broke into spontaneous cheers as the tide of battle shifted decisively. The Xerelian vessels, suddenly outmatched, began to retreat. Tell the Admiral, Elena replied with a tired smile, that his timing is impeccable. And inform Commander Xerel that perhaps he should reconsider his assessment of primitive species. The Battle of Proxima Vega. The command center aboard the UEA's Excalibur hummed with focused activity as Admiral Karim Hassan surveyed the tactical display. Elena Reyes stood beside him, having transferred from the Hyperion for this emergency war council. Around them, the senior officers from all 5 human vessels watched as Intelligence Officer Commander Y presented her analysis. The Xerelians have retreated to their colony on Proxima Vega II, Wei explained, highlighting a planet in the holographic display. Based on their communication patterns, we believe they're calling for reinforcements from their core worlds. Conservative estimates suggest we have less than 36 hours before their main fleet arrives. Admiral Hassan nodded, his weathered face grave. At 62, He was a veteran of humanity's limited interstellar conflicts, and he recognized the precipice they stood upon. "This will be the largest engagement humanity has ever faced," he stated plainly. "The Zarelian Empire controls over 300 worlds. We've awoken a sleeping giant. A giant that was going to discover us eventually," Elena countered. "Sir, the Hyperion's data cores contain extensive intelligence on Zarelian technology and tactics. They're advanced, but they've grown complacent. They categorize and dismiss species rather than truly understanding them." Hassan smiled thinly. "And that's our advantage." He expanded the tactical display. "Earth has dispatched additional forces, but they won't arrive for at least 5 days. We must hold this position until then, or the Zarelians will have an open path to our colony worlds." The next day was spent in intensive preparation. The damaged Hyperion underwent emergency repairs, while the Excalibur's engineering team analyzed Zarelian weapon signatures to optimize shield frequencies. Meanwhile, squadrons of automated combat drones were programmed with complex evasion patterns designed to confuse enemy targeting systems. "Their psychology is the key," Elena told the assembled officers during the final briefing. "The Zarelians believe in overwhelming force rather than tactical flexibility. They expect enemies to behave predictably, following established military doctrine. We need to be unpredictable." Admiral Hassan nodded in agreement, "which is why we're implementing Operation Chimera." The plan was audacious, combining technologies the Zarelians had never encountered with tactics they wouldn't expect. As the human fleet took up defensive positions around Proxima Vega's asteroid belt, hundreds of quantum beacons were deployed throughout the system, each capable of generating false sensor readings and disrupting enemy communications. The waiting was the hardest part. Elena found herself on the Excalibur's observation deck, staring out at the stars when Chief Science Officer Dr. Imani Okoro joined her. "Captain Reyes," the scientist greeted her. "I thought you might like to know. The analysis of Zarelian shield technology is complete. Their crystalline matrix is vulnerable to precisely modulated graviton pulses. We've modified our weapon systems accordingly." Elena smiled gratefully. "That could make all the difference, Doctor." "I wanted to say something else," Okoro continued, her voice softer. "What you did with the Hyperion, holding off their fleet until reinforcements arrived, it was remarkable. The stuff of legends." Elena shook her head. "We did what humans have always done when backed into a corner. We adapted." The alarm klaxons cut through their conversation. "All personnel to battle stations. Zarelian fleet detected entering the system." The command center was a model of controlled chaos as Elena took her position beside Admiral Hassan. The tactical display showed the incoming threat. 67 Zarelian warships, including 3 massive dreadnoughts nearly twice the size of the Excalibur. "Their formation suggests they expect us to flee or surrender," Tactical Officer Commander Rodriguez observed. "They're not deploying for a complex engagement." Hassan's eyes gleamed. "Then let's surprise them. Initiate Chimera protocol." Throughout the asteroid belt, quantum beacons activated simultaneously. The human fleet, consisting of only 5 vessels, suddenly appeared to Zarelian sensors as a force of over 30 ships scattered throughout the system. Meanwhile, the actual vessels powered down to minimal signatures, hidden among the larger asteroids. The Zarelian fleet split into multiple attack groups, moving to engage the phantom targets. Only when their formation had been thoroughly disrupted did Admiral Hassan give the order. "All ships, execute attack pattern Hydra." The 5 human vessels surged from hiding, their engines flaring to maximum as they drove straight into the heart of the scattered Zarelian formation. It was a maneuver no conventional military doctrine would recommend. 5 ships charging against more than 60. But the humans weren't fighting conventionally. The Excalibur's main batteries fired first, launching not energy weapons but swarms of graviton missiles specifically calibrated to the frequency of Zarelian shields. Where conventional weapons would have been absorbed, these penetrated effortlessly, detonating against the crystalline hulls beneath. Direct hits on 17 enemy vessels, Rodriguez reported. Their shields are reconfiguring, but slowly. They weren't prepared for graviton weapons. Meanwhile, the Hyperion and the 3 destroyers executed a complex maneuver, weaving between enemy vessels while deploying quantum mines, devices that created localized distortions in spacetime itself. Zarelian ships found themselves unable to maintain formation as space twisted around them, their energy weapons firing into empty vacuum as targets seemed to shift position instantaneously. The enemy flagship is attempting to coordinate a response, communications reported, deploying communication jammers. Throughout the battlefield, specialized drones activated, broadcasting signals across all Zarelian communication frequencies. Their carefully engineered quantum algorithms adapted in real time to circumvent Zarelian encryption, leaving the enemy fleet increasingly fragmented and uncoordinated. For 20 minutes, the human vessels struck with surgical precision before withdrawing to the cover of the asteroid belt. 7 Zarelian ships had been destroyed outright, 22 severely damaged, and the remainder thrown into disarray. But the respite was brief. The Zarelians, while surprised, were quick to adapt. Their remaining vessels consolidated into defensive formations, energy shields modulating to resist further graviton attacks. They're learning, Elena observed, faster than we anticipated. Admiral Hassan nodded grimly. Phase 2, then. All vessels, prepare quantum shield integration. This was humanity's most closely guarded technological achievement. The ability to synchronize quantum shields across multiple vessels, creating a unified defense system greater than the sum of its parts. As the human ships moved into a tight pentagonal formation, their individual shield systems linked, energy flowing between them in pulsing arcs of light. The Zarelian counterattack came with overwhelming force. Dozens of vessels fired simultaneously, focusing their firepower on what they perceived as the human fleet's vulnerable center, the Excalibur itself. But instead of striking a decisive blow, they witnessed something unprecedented. The combined quantum shield didn't merely absorb the attack. It channeled it, conducting the energy through the synchronized field and redirecting it outward in a devastating shockwave that rippled through space. The nearest Zarelian vessels were caught unprepared, their shields failing as their own energy was reflected back at them. 11 more ships fell silent, drifting powerless through the battlefield. Quantum shield integration holding at 87%, engineering reported. But we can't sustain this indefinitely, Admiral. The power requirements are exceeding projections. Hassan knew they were racing against time. Despite their initial success, the human fleet was vastly outnumbered. If the battle continued much longer, attrition would inevitably favor the Zarelians. Target their flagship, he ordered. All vessels, concentrate fire. The 5 human ships synchronized their weapon systems, the combined output reaching levels that would have been impossible individually. The beam that lanced across space was blindingly bright, cutting through the void toward the largest Zarelian dreadnought. At the last moment, 3 Zarelian cruisers moved to intercept, sacrificing themselves to protect their command vessel. The explosion as they disintegrated momentarily blinded sensors throughout the battlefield. When visibility returned, both fleets had suffered damage. 2 human destroyers were reporting critical system failures, and the Excalibur's forward shields were dangerously weakened. But the Zarelians had lost nearly a third of their force, with many more vessels disabled or severely damaged. Captain, communications called to Elena. We're receiving a transmission from the Zarelian flagship, text only. The message appeared on the main screen. Ceasefire, Parley requested. Elena and Admiral Hassan exchanged glances. Could be a trap, Hassan muttered. Or they could genuinely be reassessing, Elena countered. The Zarelians value efficiency above all. They may have calculated that continued combat isn't worth the losses. After brief deliberation, Hassan agreed to a temporary ceasefire. A neutral meeting zone was established between the fleets, with both sides maintaining battle readiness. The Zarelian delegation arrived in a small shuttle, led by not Grand Commander Xeril, but a higher-ranking official who introduced himself as Supreme Strategist Callan. Tall even by Xerelian standards, with skin that shimmered with deep purple iridescence, he carried himself with unmistakable authority. "You are not what we expected," Callan stated without preamble as he joined the human representatives in the meeting chamber. "Our preliminary categorization of your species was incorrect." "A costly error," Admiral Hassan replied evenly. Callan's 6 eyes pulsed with what might have been acknowledgement. "Indeed, we have fought 17 spacefaring species across 12 millennia. None have employed tactics or technologies like yours. Humans have always been adaptable," Alina explained. "We don't follow conventional paths of technological development. We innovate differently." "So we have observed," Callan agreed. "Your quantum shield integration technology alone defies our understanding of energy physics, and your tactical approach, sacrificing conventional strategic advantage for unpredictability, is not something our military doctrine accommodates." The conversation continued for hours, evolving from tense negotiation into something approaching genuine exchange. The Xerelians, Alina realized, weren't merely imperious conquerors. They were methodical categorizers of the universe, their entire civilization built around the principle of hierarchical order. "We have never encountered a species that advanced so quickly in so many different directions simultaneously," Callan admitted. "Our civilization progressed linearly, perfecting one technology before moving to the next. Your approach seems chaotic by comparison." "We call it parallel innovation," Dr. Okoro explained. "Different human groups pursue different technologies simultaneously, cross-pollinating ideas across disciplines. It's inefficient in some ways, but it leads to unexpected breakthroughs." By the meeting's end, the immediate crisis had been diffused. The Xerelian Empire would not pursue hostilities against human worlds, at least for now. Instead, a diplomatic exchange would be established, with both sides carefully studying the other. As the Xerelian delegation prepared to depart, Supreme Strategist Callan approached Alina privately. "You could have destroyed more of our vessels," he observed. "Your targeting was precise, disabling rather than destroying when possible." "Why?" Alina considered the question carefully. "Because we don't measure victory by the number of enemies killed. We wanted to defend ourselves, not annihilate your forces." Callan's eyes pulsed in a pattern she couldn't interpret. "Fascinating. This may be why your species has progressed so rapidly despite your limited history. You focus on creation rather than destruction." After the Xerelians departed, Admiral Hassan called the fleet's senior officers for a final briefing. "This isn't the end," he cautioned. "The Xerelians have withdrawn for now, but they'll be studying us, reassessing. And there are other species out there, some potentially less willing to negotiate." Alina nodded in agreement. "But we've shown what humanity can do when challenged. We don't need to be the most powerful civilization in the galaxy, just the most innovative." As the human fleet prepared for the journey home, Alina returned to the Hyperion's bridge. The vessel had suffered significant damage, but repairs were already underway, engineers incorporating lessons learned from the battle to improve its systems. Looking out at the stars, Alina reflected on what they had accomplished. Humanity had faced its greatest challenge and emerged not just surviving, but with new knowledge, new technologies developed under pressure, and a new understanding of their place in the galaxy. The Xerelians had laughed at humanity's supposed primitiveness, but that laughter had been silenced when faced with the true power of human innovation, adaptability, and determination. It was a lesson the galaxy would not soon forget. Navigation. Alina called to her bridge crew. "Set course for Earth. We have quite a story to tell."